little less of that bumpy ride that we'd seen in the previous couple of sessions. Well, it stayed that way until about the final 2 hours, and then we started to see some serious selling going on in terms of the Dow. The Dow was down about 160 points in the final couple hours. Matter of fact, the last hour or so of the day, the NASDAQ actually sold off as well. It didn't get sold off too hard, but it finished down about 16 points and down about 70 points on the Dow. But considering where they were, it was sort of a sharp move late in the day. There's no doubt about it. Crude started to move. It moved back and recaptured that 53, closed near 54. We got a little pressure going today. The 10-year was up about 4% yesterday. And of course, with that, we had some great participation from financials. It was really a day that was focused on energy. And energy was absolutely ripping to the upside. So that was part of the story as well. Technology was down about 1% yesterday. Nothing huge, but certainly pulling on the NASDAQ. But you had record highs for the SMH. You had record highs for biotech. So really, really a pretty back and forth sort of movement throughout the day. Now, the leaders were those big beta names that we talk about all the time when it comes back to the energy space. Holly, Frontier, you've got Occidental, we had Marathon, we had Devon. All of those were up anywhere between 6% and about 11% yesterday. So a really nice performance. And that's part of what really leads into today as far as what's getting pushed down. And I mentioned that we had a pretty nice day with the financials, obviously with the 10-year. We also look at the energy space and a really nice day there, a nice percentage move to the upside. And by the way, the volume just continues to be unbelievable, and we've been talking about it for a really long time. I know that, but I got to pound the table even further because 47.6 million contracts trading yesterday. The derivatives markets have been absolutely on fire, and we've talked about this all the time, but the fact that we are somewhere in the 40 million mark on a couple of different occasions this week really says a lot, because you go back to 2019, it was an unbelievable year, and it averaged about 19, 20 million contracts per day. Here you can see as we moved through 2020 and we were averaging something closer to 30 million a day, and now all of a sudden we've got multiple days in the early part of January here where we're 40 plus million contracts. That really does say a lot. Apple was 1.2 million of that. Tesla was 1 million of that. GameStop was about 750,000 of that. But that says even more about how broad this has spread, not just in specific names like I just mentioned, but throughout so many different equities in these markets. So that continues to be something that's really strong. So we started off today down about 150 points on the Dow. A lot of that having to do with what we're seeing from earnings. We talked about earnings season. It's kicking off, and obviously, you look over at the financials. The financial numbers looked pretty extraordinary, with the exception maybe as well of Wells Fargo, which was missed on their revenue number. But you look at the earnings of JPMorgan, you look at the revenue of JPMorgan, you look at the earnings and the revenue of Citi, and you start to say, wow, why are they selling these off? I'll give you a real quickie. JPMorgan's up 40% in 3 months. I've got Citi up 58% in the last couple of 3 months. Wells Fargo's up 51% in the last 3 months or so. So a little bit of that pause maybe and a pullback, and certainly seeing that. Wells Fargo down about 7.5% today, so that's significant. I looked over at JPMorgan. Last I looked, it was down about 2.5%. Could be a little bit more as the markets themselves, actually, as we got into the trading session, not only we dropped down to about 200, we cut that in half, but suddenly we were down about 350, and now we're down a little less than 300 points on the Dow. But definitely some pressure on the markets, down about 1% across all the major indices, at least moments ago, the last I looked. And as I mentioned, also add in Citi, down about 5%. But look at the percentage moves that they've had into this number. So that really does give you a little bit of an indication of where we were and some of the movement there. Now, financials and energy are certainly what's pulling on the markets today, no doubt about it. We've talked about this. We've had these 2 and 3 and 4 and 5% moves in energy, and then we get a move to the downside of about 2 or 3%. And then the energy, because the absolute number has been moving to the upside. We all have been watching energy as that's been exploding to the upside. So let's jump into a little unusual, and then we're going to get the heck out of here. I will be on the halftime report today, so I look forward to that. We've got our Market Rebellion cocktail hour today as well after the close, so that should be fun as well. And we recap everything that's going. I would encourage people, if they want to, that's something that they would want to tune into, although there's different hurdles you've got to get over to do that, but you can check with the Market Rebellion folks on that. So The names that are getting hit the hardest, blood in the streets, Warren Buffett, one of the greatest traders of all time. Investor, yes, but also trader. Because as you know, and we talk about this a lot, you look at the derivatives markets, Carl Icahn participates, Warren Buffett participates. You go through a lot of the biggest, and not necessarily, forget age, people position themselves as much as possible as they can in the derivatives markets oftentimes. Gives them leverage and a little bit of that under the radar sort of a way of starting to get into some positions. So energy, I mentioned that. So Devon stands out for some unusual for me. That stock was off about 5%. That's one of the names that's been running to the upside. We talk about these beta names. I'd throw Devon in that category. Stock was trading around 1940. Could be a little bit lower right now, but they bought about 6,500 of the January the 22nd expiring. So you're going into next week. The 21.5 call. Stock trading under 19.5. They're going for the 21.5s, looking for a fairly substantial move. 20 cents. I love risk rewards like this where I know exactly what my risk is, and I like that risk reward potential. Doesn't mean it's for everybody, but I'm just giving you a little bit of the insight in that. So on a move to the upside, if there's any continuation in energy and the energy space, these could maybe start to move, but you've only got 1 week, so let's not forget about that. That's next Friday. Financials, JPMorgan, we had just got the earnings, right? And so when I look at the unusual, suddenly one of the very first that hit today for us, JPMorgan, 4,500 of 2 weeks out, the January 29th expiring, 140 calls, right where the stock virtually was trading. 138 to 140 is where they were trading. These options were going somewhere between about, call it 250 and about 370. But as the markets has pulled back a little bit more, they might even be a little less expensive at this point in time. But just to give you a little idea that it looks like with this little bit of a drawback we are seeing in some of these names, that maybe there's some folks out there that still believe, and we are seeing some of that unusual option activity in there. You got to have the knowledge. You better have the knowledge. You have to have the understanding of the derivatives markets, or you can get burned and you're never going to want to go back, and that's not going to be a great experience. So please have the knowledge. The Market Rebellion team does an unbelievable job with that. Folks, have a great day of trading. I'll see you at noon.